Alrighty, everyone. How's it going? Good afternoon or evening, depending on where you're at. My name is Toby Hilton, and I'm going to be going over problem number 6 for our Quiz Access Chapter 5. 6 is a pretty interesting one. Kind of puts a lot into what we studied this week, and has some pretty interesting stuff. Has some pretty interesting equations we got to learn, but it's all pretty straightforward. So I'm just going to move through it step by step, kind of show the way I did it, and hopefully we can just learn something new, right? Starting off, we're going to just kind of read the problem. It gives us the information that Lopez Company reported the following current year data is for its only product. The company uses a periodic inventory system, and its ending inventory consists of 390 units, 130 from each of the last 3 purchases. So that ending inventory of 390, that's going to be super crucial to what we're doing today. You got to keep that noted down. That 130 from each unit is only going to come into plan right here with the specific identification. Looking at the steps we got to complete, A through D is to determine the cost assigned to ending inventory and cost of goods sold for the following. And E is to see which method yields the highest net income. How I did this was I started with FIFO, went to LIFO, then I moved to weighted average and specific identification. I just found FIFO and LIFO easier to start with, and I just worked my way up. So yeah, I'll explain. So basically with FIFO, first in, first out, basically what we're seeing here is we need to find the ending inventory and that is priced using the most recent cost. So what we see here is our most recent is December 19th. We see that they sold 440 units for $410 per unit. Basically what we see here is we just have to find, our ending inventory and our cost of goods sold. So our ending inventory that we were given was 390 units. We need to make sure that 390 units is always at least able to equal all of these. That 230, it doesn't, so that's going to affect the LIFO. But right now for FIFO, it fits right into 440. So all we're going to do to calculate the ending inventory is we're going to take the 390, multiply it by the cost that was given for this, that 410. So we do that on calculators, and it should give us 1,599. That would be our ending inventory. Cost of goods sold, pretty simple. All it is total cost, which is that 13,325, and we're going to subtract it by the ending inventory we just got. So we do that, and it will give us 11,726. Pretty straightforward there. LIFO is kind of the opposite. We're going to look at the ending inventory, and we're going to see how it's priced using the oldest cost. So as I mentioned, it's going to be a little bit different because 230 does not equal, because we're going to start with January 1st. It does not equal with 320. So what we're going to have to do is use what we got. So we're going to take all those 320 units, and we're going to multiply it by this. That already gives us the answer of 736. We're going to have to hang on to that. Now, in order to make up that 330, if we subtract 330 by 390, we're going to need 160 more units. So we're going to take those 160 units, and we're going to put it down here in March. Obviously, March has enough because they have 500 units, and we're going to take the 160 and multiply it by the 375 units price that they have. We do that, and it will give us straight up $600. Pretty simple right there. All we do there is we add the $336 that we got from the first one, and we add it to the 600, and that will give us $1,336 for our ending inventory. So we got that right there. As we said, cost of goods sold, just the total cost minus that we just calculated, and it will give us 11,989. 11,989. Pretty simple there. FIFO, LIFO, pretty simple. Moving on to weighted average. Basically, the idea of this is we need to calculate one average cost per unit for all available units during the period, and then we need to apply it. So pretty straightforward here. In order to calculate the average cost per unit, what we learned is that is total cost divided by the total units. So we got 13,325, and we divide that by 3,330. Given that, it gives us kind of a weird number that goes on for a long time. It's 4.0015015, and it just keeps going. We're going to kind of round that up a little bit. So we still see, so now we have to just take those 390 units that we had before for the ending inventory, and we need to multiply it by that number we just got. If we do that, just kind of rounding it up, or if you have it in your calculator right there, we will get the number, it goes on for a long time, but rounded up, it will give us 1,560.59. That's rounded to the cents, right? Because we're not going to have decimals that go on forever. We can't do that. Going on to our cost of goods sold, all we're going to do is take that 13,000 again, 13,325, subtract it by what we just calculated, and it will give us our first decimal in the cost of goods sold, and that will be 11,764.41. Pretty straightforward. Specific identification is probably the weirdest of the bunch, but it's pretty simple if you understand it. All we're told here is that we need to find the ending inventory, or take the ending inventory from the last three purchases. Right? Remember this part that said 130 for each of the last three purchases? Last three purchases are right here, 28, 3, 19. So these have a lot of units, but we're not going to be looking at it. We need to take 130 from each of these units, multiply it by the price, and see what we get. We take July 28th, we're going to do 130 times its 3.7 price range, and we're going to get 481. We take October 3rd with its 130, and we multiply it by its 4.6. That will give us 598. Finally, December 19th, we take its 130 and multiply it by its 4.1, and that will give us 533. So we take that 481, 598, and 533, add those all together, and that will give us 1,612. You take that, minus, get the total cost again, minus that, and that will give us our 11,713. So pretty straightforward, not too complex at all. But there can, like I said, I kind of worked my way from the least tricky to the most tricky. So we got FIFO, LIFO, weighted average, and specific identification. So now we have to take all this into to see, and we got to see, what is obviously the best for the net income. So my first mistake that I did while deciding is I thought that honestly specific identification would be the answer because it has the lowest cost of sales of, what is it called? Cost of goods sold. I thought that might mean that we would get a higher income. Now, after a second try and kind of looking at it, I realized that FIFO was the answer. And the way that I found out that this was the answer is FIFO actually tends to present what I've studied. It tends to present a higher net income when the prices are rising. As we can see throughout this year, the prices have been rising until December. They kind of dropped down to 410. So what kind of that means is that the price, it's going up. Under FIFO, that means that the oldest cost, they're recorded as the cost of goods sold first. And what that means is the more newer and more expensive units end up staying in the ending inventory and not in the cost of goods sold. Basically, what this is leading to is kind of like this, it's like a train of thought. It means, so if we have a lower cost of goods sold, this means that we go to a higher gross profit, and that will therefore lead us to a higher net income. So what kind of going back on those prices rising, when we basically see when the cost is rising, FIFO makes the profits look higher rather than, then it makes it look higher compared to LIFO or even average cost, other average cost methods. That's kind of where I found it. I'm still a little shaky on that subject. I'm not entirely sure. It's something I need to study a little bit more, but that's kind of how I came to that conclusion is although the cost of the goods sold is a little bit less here, the second one that follows is FIFO. And just kind of what I'm saying there is somehow it means that it will make a higher net income because of the rising prices. That's kind of what I got at. Pretty straightforward, pretty simple. But yeah, guys, I hope that explains it for you guys. I hope I maybe if you have any questions, just leave a comment on the discussion board and I'd be happy to explain it. Like I said, there's still a few things I gotta learn to review. But I hope you guys appreciate this video and have a good one.